Good evening. I'm Charles Schultz with Schultz Laboratories and Universe Science Center, and this is the Randomizer for Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. We're glad you're here, and we've got an amazing show for you tonight. The term for tonight is going to be exobiology, and there is a special interest here because this is a very auspicious date. Um, 18 years ago today, this is the 18th anniversary of some major discoveries I made in exobiology, and so that is why it's a subject tonight. And I may run a little long because I get to be a little long-winded on things like this. Real quickly, anybody who hasn't done it, please go to schultzlaboratories.com or universesciencecenter.com and click on the links to sign up as a member and support our channel and our growth and our site. Take your Oculus, go in 3D mode, and walk around the galleries and explore. We're adding new things all the time. It's a lot of fun and very exciting, and give us hints about what you'd like to see in those galleries as well. Use it to educate yourself, homeschooling. If the schools are closed, come here. We've got a lot more content going in, and you're going to really enjoy it. Also, sign up for our 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Monday night classes. We're doing Meta World Lesson 4 on Monday the 21st. So be sure to join us then. So back to the matter at hand. So tonight's show is about exobiology, and I have to say, I'm going to do something a little unusual here. I'm broadcasting from inside my virtual Mars room in the Universe Science Center, and so this is a fully virtual gallery you can walk around in. You can go in here, explore everything, and we're going to take a tour through here live. Now, I started out in science really as a child. When I was 4 and 5, I started collecting rocks and fossils, and there were a lot of other adults around who were really very kind about it and generous, and they knew that I was interested. Well, rock hounds are like that. They'll pick up a rock anywhere, but I learned an awful lot about what fossils and minerals look like and their chemistry and their hardness and their sources, their origins. And oddly, in a big way, the chemistry of the rocks and the crystal structures of the minerals were some of the things that drove me to become a scientist because I wanted to learn more. And I started getting interested in microbiology. And, we weren't a rich family, but I have to say that my mother really went out of her way to make sure I had a microscope and a chemistry set and a telescope. And so I really had the right support for what I wanted to learn. And I was interested in space and robots and electronics. And all of it came literally from humble rocks, the bones of the earth. And so when I began going through a pretty rough time many years back. This was back in 2003. I had a business established, Xenotech Research, and I took on research jobs, and I did robotics, and I wired computer systems, and I did a lot of interesting things. And I also did some physics research. And I was going through a pretty tough time at a divorce, and so I had basically been kicked out of the house and was living in my business in a warehouse. Fortunately, I was able to make it very comfortable, and I have to admit, even though things seemed grim at the time, it really turned into one of the very best situations I ever could have had. And as a result of all of that, um, the turmoil led me to look for ways to find peace. And one of the things I love to do is research. And so Opportunity and Spirit rovers had just landed on Mars December and in January, and I started analyzing the images. And the idea was, wouldn't it be great to build a rover model that could go online and students could log in and literally run a simulated mission with a model of a Mars rover? And we began building elements of a diorama and putting a rover together. And I started analyzing the images, and what struck me right away, particularly the images from Opportunity, was that the rocks were supposed to be volcanic, and yet when you looked at them, you could tell that they literally had the layers of sedimentation and bubbles and pockets in many cases. And I'll tell you something, if you're a rock collector, you know if a sedimentary rock has voids or holes in it, it's probably from decaying tissue, from remnants of something. And it got me interested immediately. I knew what I was seeing was eroded, dried sea bottom mud. It was very, very obvious to me. And on the other hand, I have to admit, with many years of experience in science in general and in rocks and minerals, it was pretty obvious. So as I was going through the images, I began to see some things that really stood out. And when I saw the spherules, what NASA often calls the blueberries, I knew what I was seeing right away. Um, and as a fossil collector, the things that I saw stood out immediately. They looked like the trash that washes up on a beach, the bits of shell and mineral, scraps of coral. And you could see that the features in them were consistent. So this drove me to really investigate what I was seeing. And I couldn't wait every day for the images. And one of the neat things you can do, I worked in aerospace and defense for years, and one of the things that I used to do was work on systems that did digital image processing, image enhancement. And I learned a lot of tricks that are used in law enforcement and security and secret services and in aerospace and weapons. And one of the tricks is frame stacking. So if you have many pictures of the same thing, you can stack them up together. If they're the same scale, you scale them in. And as you stack them up, an interesting thing happens. If there's noise in the image, it's only transitory, and the other images voted out, and it basically vanishes. And you can enhance and sharpen the image if you scale them and overlap them just so details will appear that are not immediately apparent in the raw images. So sharpening images like this is a very common practice, and it works quite effectively. The other things that you can do is you can take images that have a shadow that's moved because the sun's angle has changed, and you can put them together and it enhances the edge information that normally you might not see. So using methods like this, and some of them were very obvious and didn't really need much processing, I discovered what was very clearly, in my opinion, marine fossils on Mars. And we knew very soon that these were dried ocean beds. And so that was a confirmation. And the other one was this. If you find one anomalous feature that looks like something, you're like, well, random erosion. But if you find 5 or 10 or 1,000 of them, then it's not erosion, because erosion is very bad at making duplicates of the same thing. And so it became very clear very rapidly what I was seeing was indeed fossils. So I've taken the liberty of putting it all into a gallery. And the gallery that I'm in right now, I'm going to take you for a walk through the gallery and show you some of these discoveries. So I'm going to click over to the gallery right here, and you'll be there right away. So this is the Mars Gallery, and we're going to navigate it. And this is the room that we're in the Universe Science Center. And in this gallery, we have pictures from the surface of Mars in true color. And we've got some pretty amazing things here. And one is a whole collection of fossils that were located. And if you look at the placard here, it lays out a description of where it came from and what it was and what sol it was found on. And if you look at some things here, you can see pretty clearly this is a sample of coral. You can see the pores and the ridges on it. These are broken seashells, and this is literally a trilobite fossil. Now, trilobites have been extinct on the Earth for over 200 million years. I think it's 225 million years. And to find right next door to us on a planet with a terrible, lousy environment that there once were trilobites, that is an amazing discovery. And you may see these are sand dollars. These are small rolled up trilobites. This is a trilobite from Earth, right here, our hometown. And here you can see rolled up trilobites with the tail wrapped around them. Now the key here is these things are bilaterally symmetrical. The right and left half are the same, just like your right and left hand are mirror images of each other. And so you can see the tail wrapped up in the left and right parts of the shell. Here the tail, the left and right part of the shell. The left and right part of the shell, the end of the tail. And you can see the lobes in every case. When a trilobite dies, it rolls up like a roly-poly or a pill bug. And so this is what we're looking at. And here there's literally a star printed on this one. This is a sea urchin. And all of these rows of bumps are where the spines are attached to it. But what makes this one unique is this. Sea urchins on Earth have 5 segments, like a star. This one has 6. The lines are in 6s. There's no sea urchin on Earth like that. This is truly an interesting find. So we have a lot of fossils here, crinoids, shells, really amazing things. And I'm going to take you on a quick jaunt through some of these findings here. Now, one of the most important things is we're told there's no water on Mars. But if you look, the rover tracks are dark, as if they've gone through mud. Now, you've walked on soil that was white on the surface or dry on the surface, but directly underneath it was muddy, and when you kicked it over, it got dark. Well, this is what we're seeing. What's most interesting, this is literally a geyser. Now, if you look, you will see a ridge here where the soil has washed up and away from it and down here. And it spewed all the spherules up here. And NASA called this soil subsidence. The soil had subsided. Well, the stereo images show that the soil is piled up. And I don't know what planet you're on, but it doesn't matter because soil only subsides down, not uphill. So some material had to move that soil uphill, and it makes the soil dark and muddy looking underneath. That's a pretty interesting clue. Right over here, this is from Sol 118, we literally have a geyser. You can stick your hand in there. It's about 4 inches wide. And again, it's all washed clean right where the water would flow. And the interesting thing, when water flows, it leaves these spherules in lines like this. You've seen this where water's washed over your driveway when you're hosing it off. Same thing. The area up here also appears to be wet. What's most amazing? We literally have water trails on the soil here. And this is a kind of a dark image. What proved it? Water has a color that isn't visible to the human eye, and it's in the infrared. And when you look at the infrared images, those trails are extremely dark. So if you come to our site and you go through the Mars Gallery, you will see true color images from the rovers, you'll see magnified views of the spherules, and you'll discover some amazing things. This is a close-up of that area, and we've zoomed in to show one specific fossil that appears to have what looks like a handprint pattern. Well, many of the spherules have that same pattern on them. What's unique about this one is that when magnified, you can see that it makes a pentagon with a sunburst pattern, 5s and 10s. Now, crystals don't grow in patterns of 5s. They're in 2s, 4s, 6s, 3s, not 5s. This is where the logo for Schultz Laboratories came from. And if you look, you can see that pattern very faintly right there on the urchin. So this absolutely proves this is a biological process and not erosion. And without belaboring that, I'd like to take you through the gallery so you can see for yourself. Here is an amazing find. You'll notice this particular rock right here has what looks like teardrop patterns on it. And if you measure the angles, they're at the angles of a pentagon, 72 degrees. And so we see a teardrop here, we see a teardrop here, and we see a teardrop there. And if you look in the infrareds, you can also see shadows of the ones below. So there's 5 identical patterns the same size arranged in a circle. When I reconstructed the solid model, I overlaid the picture, and there it is. You can see the patterns. So this is not an eroded form. This is a biological form. It's from a crinoid, an ancient plant animal sort of thing. It looks like a plant, but it's actually an animal. And you can see other examples that we have on Earth that are very similar in form. So I also found that there were numerous bodies of water standing on Mars, and they're briny. They're what's known as hypersaline brine. These are 3 different brine lakes existing on Mars today. Now, the question that people ask is, where did the oceans go on Mars? The answer is very simple. Mars is in an ice age, and the ice is in sheets under the soil. At the edge of this crater, you can see where the ice has melted, and it's running down inside the crater and pooling, creating this brine lake. And there are the ripples in the sand, and there's even little islands standing up in the water, it looks like. Here's another one that was found by Malin Space Science Systems, and they said, we don't know what it is, but it sure looks like a lake, but it can't be. Well, Here's another one that actually has green stuff in the water. And this was found by the European Space Agency, and George Newcomb was responsible for processing this image. There are at least 3 bodies of water staying on the planet today. And just to give you an assurance that we know that the color is correct in these images, Mars has blue skies most of the time, or white skies, not orange and muddy looking. This is a true color image. You can see the copper and the brass and the stainless and the aluminum are each very clearly identifiable. And using NASA's own color calibration, you have red, white, and blue right there on the rover arm. And this insulation color, this is Kapton, and it has a very distinct color. So we have a number of things in the frames that we can use as color references from NASA's own data, and one is their sundial. Now, one of the earlier jobs I had many years ago, I worked in a print shop in the darkroom, and one of the things that I did was color separations so you could print things accurately in full color for halftones. And I ran a densitometer, and I took the densitometry of the negatives and matched it to the true colors, and therefore we were able to get really accurate color from the printing process. Well, this and the fact that I know a lot of the physics of light and its optics, these are the foundations of putting together true color images, not like the ones that NASA publishes on their site. And so I took a lot of pride and a lot of care in putting these images together. And you can literally see mud flow here. Water has flowed and terraced this mud. We have it in stereo, and you can see it there, and it proves the shape. But what's most interesting is if you take day-to-day images on the surface of the planet, you will see the rate of erosion, that things are being erased on a moment-by-moment basis. It takes 3 or 4 days for some of these features to vanish. Well, then that implies that the fresh ones were freshly made. And that tells you that this is a process that is ongoing. And I do actually have pictures from day to day of changes in the soil. As for water on the planet, this crater contains enough water ice to give every man, woman, and child on Earth over 350 gallons of water. So there's no shortage of water on the planet. It's just locked up in ice right now. So I'm going to take you to the main hall real quickly here. This is, by the way, if you're in the site, there are teleporters that take you to each of these rooms. It's rather like a video game. It's very easy to navigate. We have in here various galleries showing sea urchins and trilobites and all sorts of crinoids. We're going to step in momentarily, and I've taken the effort to create some solid models for people who are not familiar with some of these organisms' remains. And once you start looking at them, it gets pretty clear what you're looking at. Stems of crinoids have segmentation, and I have the original pictures, the enhanced ones, and the markups. So you can walk through the galleries and you can see these are most definitely stems of crinoids, for instance. And you find the same features over and over, as I was saying. Here you can see the segmented stem. Well, this is a crinoid stem. And here's another one right here. You literally can see a cylinder with segments down its length of uniform size. And it's again and again in many locations. So these are very easy to recognize. And as you look at these things, you become aware that this planet was absolutely loaded with life. In this particular case, we have a bed here that has a crinoid head and its tentacles right there. And I've got it flashing in outline so people can identify it. Well, anyway, that's just one of many types of organism that exists in these galleries. And I can't understand, this is something that I actually won 2 lawsuits against NASA about a number of years back. And they were told to turn over the operating manuals for the Mir, the Mars exploration rovers, the image processing guides, a number of images that had been held beyond the legal embargo period, and lots and lots of images, and also the security classification documents for the Jet Propulsion Lab and the California Institute of Technology. And I published it all. And just to show for certain that this is not some sort of a hoax or something, you can see the shape of the head of a trilobite, and here I've outlined it, and here I've got a terrestrial specimen right by it. So you can see for yourself, it's very clear. You're seeing the same forms and structures over and over again, and erosion doesn't do that. Bounce rock. This is a really amazing print. when they were using the rock abrasion tool, that's what made this round mark. Some of the rock chipped off and it left this segmented structure with a lobe in the center and on the right and the left. And if you compare it to a terrestrial trilobite, the markings they're remarkably similar. So here again, we have a thing that looks exactly like a trilobite. Well, here, this is Charlie Flat's Sol 22, and up in the corner is a little area that, when magnified, you can see the head of the trilobite with the left and the right and the center lobe, and the segments going right down the body, and they're at right angles to that. And so we've got lots of samples of obvious organisms, and these galleries are getting filled with more samples all the time. And I just quickly want to show you one more thing here. Believe it or not, seashells. Now, seashells are really, really obvious when you look at them because they have a very distinct form to them. And I'm going to wrap this up quickly. But, you know, this is something that I've done, and I think that people really need to know what they're seeing. Here, we find what appears to be a broken shell. And I took images from numerous sols and overlaid them and enhanced them. And here we can see, if I get right up to it, this is very clearly a broken open seashell. You can see the very thin wall, perfectly uniform structure, and the shape of it coming out. And we also have this in stereo. And when you see it in 3D, it's perfectly obvious. The question that comes to mind is why NASA would not admit at this point that they have absolutely solid evidence that this has been life. And other people have faced these problems too. Here, right next to this seashell, you will see another one. And I want you to look at how remarkably similar to a conch shell or a whelk shell that is. You can actually see the spine down the center and the spiral going around it. And there's so many shells on the planet, and some of them have markings similar to olive shells. If you look up close, you see the markings on this spiral right here, and they're very similar to the geometric markings on olive shells. So we have all sorts of specimens from all over the planet, from numerous rovers and numerous sites, and everything is in agreement. We're seeing fossils, we're seeing urchins. For me, one of the most amazing finds, and I'll show you that in a second here. We can see from the Mars Science Lander, Curiosity, right here, we've got a fossil with the spine still sticking out of it. It's an urchin right in the ground there, and this is what they look like on Earth. I mean, it doesn't get much more obvious than that. And we got a smaller one here. You can see the rows of buttons on it where the spines were attached, and here we've got an inset for you to compare it to. And here's a soft body fossil. Now, soft body fossils are rare. When the shell of an urchin is trapped in the mud, if the shell caves in and mud washes in, it will fill the cavities inside. Now, we find this strange cage-like structure, and there are many of these. Here's one over here. Here's one here. There's about a dozen others. It is where the mud filled in, and the roe, the 5 sacks of roe in this specimen on Earth, the roe decays away and leaves these stems behind. The cavities are where the eggs were, the roe. And you'd think, well, that's odd. How would that be? And you look in here and you see cavities that have the wavy lines, the spines, everything matches terrestrial specimens. And here we even have a close-up of the actual shell of an urchin. You see the parallel grooves in the structure of it and the joint between the two segments. And it's so obvious. So, and I call on NASA, debate me, talk to me, look at the evidence. There is indisputable evidence that this planet was alive, and here is the most important point. You keep finding these structures over and over again with the same features, that it isn't random erosion. This is literally the shell of an urchin and Aristotle's lantern inside it. This is one on Earth, this is one on Mars. It is indisputable. The chemistry match, the geology matches, everything matches. So, the most important thing to come out of this is this. The planet was not sterilized. The planet still has living organisms on it. And what I need to get across to you is that with this sort of problem, if you take a sample back from Mars, you run the risk of bringing back still living organisms that we would have absolutely no immune resistance to. Some of these organisms will have been in stasis, just like things they found in the ice in Siberia or in salt mines. 250 million year old organisms have been taken out of salt crystals. Uh, a lot of things that live in hypersaline conditions have the ability to dry themselves out for literally thousands of years, and then as soon as water returns, they wake up. If we bring back Mars samples to Earth, we are absolute fools. We run the risk of infecting everyone with someone that we have no defense against. And there's a Mars sample return set for 2025. And if they do it, we are in danger. We don't know what's in those samples. But I can assure you of this: the planet most definitely was alive in the past, and it is covered with fossil remains. And they will take exception to that. Sorry, you're wrong. This is a fact. And all throughout history, scientists have made astounding discoveries, and they have been shouted down. Plate tectonics. Nobody believed that the continents moved, and they do, and it's been proven. Galileo finding that the Earth was not the center of the universe. Moons orbited Jupiter, that blew that theory away, and he was actually threatened with death and imprisonment by the Catholic Church. He spent the last many years of his life under house arrest. Giordano Bruno, he professed the belief that there were other solar systems, and this was before 1600. He literally made the term solar systems. And he said that there were an infinite number of worlds out there, and many could be the homes of life. Well, he was burned at the stake for that. We cannot allow people who simply disagree without solid basis to make decisions for us. This is factual information, and I absolutely challenge anybody to show me wrong. Prove me wrong. We're in danger if we bring those fossils back. But today is 18 years since this discovery was absolutely confirmed and published, and I think it's important. We need to pay attention to things like this. And I suppose with that, I'm going to yield the floor and ask if anybody has any questions. I have run a little long, but I'm open for questions. Yeah. And I have a note here. I do have a book that I wrote and published in 2008, and it's entitled A Fossil Hunter's Guide to Mars, and it is available as a download online on our site. Go to schultzlaboratories.com, go to talkuniverse.org, go to universesciencecenter.com, and follow the links. You will find the books. You can buy them and download them. Go to the Mars Gallery, and the links are right there as well. We have an unlimited number of copies because they are digital, and you will see things in there that will absolutely blow your mind. And you will also find that you're going to find material in there published 14 years ago that they are just now discovering. So I highly recommend it, but I do that because I wrote the book. And here's the other thing. We don't know if the biology on Mars is anything like the biology on Earth. Biochemistry could be wildly different, and that would be a certain sign that it was alien life and not terrestrial life. There are left-handed and right-handed versions of almost every organic molecule, and we use left-handed proteins and amino acids and right-handed sugars. If we were to find an organism that used a mixture of right-handed amino acids in there, then we would know for certain that it did not arise on this planet. So there are some very easy ways to gauge whether a sample is actually alien, and that is a very sure sign of it. And by the way, Louis Pasteur discovered that, the handedness of molecules. And a lot of people don't know that. They used to think of him as the guy that pasteurized milk. No, he was a heck of a scientist, and he discovered a lot of things. So anyway, floor is open for anyone with a question. And yes, I have been reminded. Now, I want to make this clear. I am not the person who discovered life on Mars. I found complex marine fossils, but the original discovery belongs to Dr. Gil Levin, and he was from Arizona State University. He designed the biological protection packages, the labeled release experiment that flew on Vikings 1 and Vikings 2, and both of them had positive hits for what appeared to be bacteria in the soil in 1976. And that was basically ignored away. And he passed away um, in the middle of last year, unfortunately, and never received the credit that he deserves. If you want to see an unsung hero, look up Dr. Gil Levin. He was an amazing biochemist and responsible for the discovery and proof that there was bacterial life in the soil of Mars in 1976. So think about that. That was 46 years ago, and they're still sitting on it, and it makes no sense. I mean, it's really obvious. So with that, I'm going to end my rant, and I'm going to thank everybody who had the patience to sit through this. But this is, in my opinion, one of the most important things we need to pay attention to. Do not bring samples back. It will get into our environment. We will have problems. We have no idea what it might be. It might be totally benign. Don't know. But are you willing to take a chance? Would you put your kids in a ward full of polio blankets? Would you, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to expose the planet to something like that. That's a class A1 threat, a biohazard threat. So it should be treated as such. Well, all that being said, I think I'm going to end it here, but I thank everybody for listening. Please go to schultzlaboratories.com or universesciencecenter.com. Log in, sign up for a membership, become a supporter, help us grow our galleries. And parting statement, something to give you a little faith. You know, we're in some crazy times, and a lot of times we feel that the world is bearing down on us. We feel no security. I found an extremely good statement for that. Just keep this in mind. It says, and it's Psalms 121, 7 and 8. It says, "The Lord will guard you from all evil. He will preserve your soul. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore." Now, I find that a very comforting thought, that we know we're not the pinnacle of the universe. We are not the highest thing in creation by any stretch of the imagination. Hey, we make machines that can figure things out we can't think of. You can only imagine what more there is in the universe. We are not the pinnacle by any stretch of the imagination. We only think we are. And the thought that somebody might be guiding over you, watching over you, that's pretty comforting. So take of it what you will, and try to make the world a better place. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening.